All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Puget Systems Podcast. Here we're going to be discussing our Synology NAS solutions and we're joined by James from Synology and my coworker Peter. And as always, I always like to have the guests kind of give a little intro of who you are and what you do. And so we'll start with James and then we'll go over to Peter.
All right, everyone, my name is James. I am a technical account manager with Synology. I work with just companies of every range with DSM and our solutions and Synology technology.
Peter?
Hey, I'm Peter. I'm with our labs team here at Puget, and I specifically work with media and entertainment as a tech advisor.
Well, yeah, thanks. And so thanks you guys for joining us today. And I guess, James, to start off, can you give us just kind of an overview of Synology's products in the context of what Puget Systems does and how we're working together to cater to different professionals in content creation, engineering, and scientific computing?
Yeah, so Synology produces what we like to call network attached storage. It's a system, an operating system that has certain technology like RAIDs and certain file systems that we use to, basically store data, replicate data, and move data to other locations, and provide data security around, for businesses. That's kind of in short what Synology provides.
And previously we were working with another solutions provider, let's say. And so I guess what makes Synology unique in the landscape of network attached storage?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, when they think Synology, they think, oh, little box servers. But I think we focus on the operating system and the software that we provide. I mean, marrying it to the equipment is how we really build a fast working solution and something that's efficient and high security. But I think that we really focus on our software, and that really shows with the operating system that we work with.
Well, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to the software part of it.
Yeah, getting into it, just somebody who is now on the more technical side and being a user in my past of working in post-production, would love to know more about like how Synology can help post-production teams collaborate more efficiently.
Yeah, so every Synology server has, of course, our operating system, but it's full of packages and different programs and software that is used for sharing data. One that comes up very often when I work with anything in media would be just utilizing Drive, which is a great way to share like databases with people. So, for example, someone who is working with a movie and then they have an editor on the other side of the country. You can use Drive to share a project folder like on each computer. Depending on like the size of their laptop and how much space they have available, what you're doing is you're syncing the data, and the Synology is in the middle of it all, just making sure that any changes that happen are pushed between each server. And while it also will force the project to be on both PCs, which is really important when you're dealing with media to kind of work with it like closest to the CPU. You can also change it to where it doesn't necessarily use the space on your computer very quickly. It's just kind of changing the way the task and the way the whole system is set up. It's something that someone could just go in and just unselect and start pushing, these files. I'm no longer working on this project, for example, or even we're also working with like the new betas where we're actually removing files within Drive. So it's a very, very good tool for any business to use just to share data. It's locally hosted. And there's also a lot of other tools that make Drive really, really useful, especially if you, have domains or anything like that that you can attach to it that are very make it very cool looking as well.
Yeah. So, with that, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when it goes to Drive, is it like streaming those media files from the source over to like a user, or how is that kind of working? Like, how does that kind of function?
So the user has their computer connected to the server, and what happens is you have this file, we'll just say like a project on your desktop that you're working within, and any changes that you make are synced to the Synology server and then synced back down to anyone else who adds that folder to their workstation, so, or that project. So you can share it, and then you can also give like, temporary access. You can also provide it just through a web interface as well. That's using Drive Share Sync is just one way of like really collaborating together, like with like closer projects. But there's also like other ways of sharing with just like over Drive and maybe like a quick connect link and things like that. Cool. Or a GoFundMe link. So it's all useful for sharing data and really securing it as well.
Sweet.
I'm curious, in the context of like, say, editing a video or movie, is it almost live then, or is there a bit of a delay? Like if say Peter and I are fussing around on the same video, is there a delay there, or is it a little bit more real time?
Yeah, I mean it's all dependent on how fast the internet is. There would be latency involved with it, but yeah, it would be like you can stream videos from them as well. They have, like, the cool part about Drive is it has the ability to play every type of video and show, or not every type, I don't want to say that, but like most, we'll say generally most. I don't know what it can't play, but you can never say that with computers, that it can do everything. But it'll play videos, it'll show photos, like in the web interface, that is. So it's really useful in that sense. So like a media sharing tool, it has those tools available as well.
Awesome. I guess this is going to be like a little bit more old school, where it's crazy to think like even 5 years ago, there's more handoffs of external drives that was happening within the industry. I guess just for those who are interested, what advantages does a NAS offer over like external drives or direct attached storage? For these workflows.
Just the speed. I mean, it's much easier to share if it's instant, or if it's just, like even with USBs, they still play a very critical function. And so like even with every server, there's like a button in the front that's like, it says like a C. And a lot of people know this, but if you plug a thumb drive into it and press C, it'll copy the data into the server very quickly. So it's like, if I just did some filming, go to the server, pop it in, press the C button, copies the data into a folder that I pre-designated, and I'm off to share it, or I already have this folder shared with, my team. So I'm able to like just drop it in, copy it, and go. So you think of like remote work as well. This could be a very useful tool because it will take care of the intake process. You don't have to wait for it. They just have great applications. Like all of those things are just a small portion of what the server can do as well, because it has, like I said, 100 different ways to use the server and media.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, being able to just hit a button and have it copy and be accessible from all areas instead of like waiting on an upload and just kind of pinpointing that access to the footage in one spot. It definitely helps free up a lot of time and resources.
I was like are there any interesting examples of use case for creative professionals? Again, if you gotta hedge a little bit, I understand not naming names or anything, but like something a little more unique or just interesting that stands out to you.
Yeah. Well, the thing that always I enjoy about like working with Synology is making sure data is secure is really important for every business. And, doing that, it's easy to do. You can take two storage Synology servers, like buy identical types of units, and make them in high availability of each other, and use that as a database that you're providing this whole, media platform on. That is a fast intake. You could do it on all SSDs, and really like have data redundancy. And then another Synology can be a slower unit, and now you have redundancy offsite that is with normal hard drives, for example. It's just a great way of like quickly getting a platform that's going to say, we're not going to lose any of our video data because we're able to save it in redundancies. We're using RAID technology. We're using high available drives. And all of this is just, we can set it up with Synology. We just have to configure it, work with your guys' team and do it. And that's the type of systems I'll work with. and it's cool to go back afterwards and for them to be like, that was great. It was a good platform for us to work within. Our team liked it. Upload speeds were good. We had 10 gig network in place, 25 gigs are the lowest latency possible. We're using fiber optics, and the everyone's able to get their products done. And there's also additional tools that we provide. And it's easy to integrate even other technology into it as well, other file services and other systems. So
I'm curious too. I imagine there's quite a bit of mixed workflows, like variety of operating systems, Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and things like that. Any funny business or trouble working in mixed workflows like that?
Not. We of course we're Linux, so Linux it relates to very well. Anything with SMB, which is Apple, Windows, Linux, there's different file services as well. So like NFS is available, and then and there's also like block level like iSCSI. We even have some units that'll do fiber channel, and these are all been used in media because latency reasons and speed and maybe just available technology. So they're very versatile. Really no limitations that I've ever ran into.
And just to keep going a little bit on that, I know some of our customers operate in like a live broadcast environment. How do you guys how does Synology fit into that sort of space?
Really good. I think that one way I like to look at it as an example of how a Synology is like a good for broadcasting is like a fourth of our equipment, or like when people are using Synology using our solution, or even more than that. I don't even know exactly the number. It's a lot. They use it for surveillance, and surveillance station is something that is like a media presentation. Like even like our dashboards in it. Like if you're looking at a large surveillance, like think of like security, like board with a bunch of different cameras. Those are all capable within a Synology server. So working with databases that have a lot of video files is easy with the file system. We're able to take snapshots of those databases too to make sure that like changes over time can be protected. I think that we work with it really well. Especially with like other equipment too, like everyone likes to get really powerful machines. And Synology can be a really, really good complementary, like anything that you guys deal with. So I'll just buying a Synology is very complementary because it's like there's a nice little like file server, not necessarily the render, just what I mean with the video games and movies. But Synology is a storage target and a medium for that, and also a way to connect and a way to secure the data. Kind of the way I think.
Yeah. I guess outside of like security footage and just have you dealt with any use cases where there is like say like remote recording where somebody's trying to record something live and use Synology as like their way of like recording to and also distributing content? Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean there's every size of server. That's one benefit. And so you think of like when traveling, I've heard about people taking even like disk stations and traveling because they're small and you can put 2 flash stations in them. And going back to my copy points, so you plug it in the hotel, it's able to connect to the Wi-Fi and connect back to other networks. Like a node for traveling. People have used on that. There's that's something that I know happens. As well as like just having servers and clouds to send data to. I've heard about also in like people collecting like data about like forestry and different media that's like this is large data files, and they'll use a Synology as like intake. We have some pretty large like SaaS servers that can be pretty good speeds for write, and they'll use them as intake for data. Perform really well. So definitely in those areas. I know in California and Michigan, there's a lot of studio related um, production environments. They use flash stations quite a bit for media production. They have the speed. A lot of times they're adding like 25 gig mix to them as well. Just because latency is really the most important thing when you're doing any video. Latency and typology, the network, how fast you can get to the server, and then larger, you want to have large RAIDs helps as well. Not like too large, but like decent sized RAIDs can help the speed. You don't never want to make a RAID too big though. It'll take a very long time to rebuild.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, like, why would you not want it to be too big? And is it just
Yeah. So RAIDs can be broken up into groups, and so they can still work together to make a single like file system. That's not really the concern. It's mostly like when you have multiple RAIDs, you want to not make them too big to the point where drives will fail too quickly before it can rebuild the RAID from the original drive failure, especially in like older systems. Having too large of a RAID. And I mean, like, a RAID that's the size of 36 drives is kind of too large. I think it should be 20 is usually what we would recommend, like 20 drives. And we have specific servers made to build 20 drives.
Okay.
And that's one of the really big, like media outlets that we work with is actually with that unit specifically because it can do, 20 drives and RAID groups. And we'll use 3 RAID groups of 20 and make a very large storage for, a large amount of media, 300, 400 terabytes.
That makes a little more sense. I was thinking more the total storage capability in terms of size and not necessarily the number of drives. That does make sense. If you wouldn't want too many individual drives in. Yeah.
Because it's just splitting the data up between all of them. And next thing you know, you'll have the data needs to move so much just to complete the RAID. You don't want to spread it too far out. So it just makes things rebuild for a very long time. Like a drive, you'll add a drive and it'll be rebuilding for like a half a year. You're just like, why did it take so long?
Yikes.
Yeah. So it's just, it's how RAIDs work. So build them small, 20, 12. And then with Flash, I will also like I deal with a lot of like, Flash platforms. We'll build them as like 2 groups of 12, for example. So you can have RAID parity. So.
Oh, I guess there's a lot of discussion around cloud versus on-prem or these sort of or almost private cloud solutions, things like that. I guess how do I phrase this? I guess how do you go about working with somebody on deciding what's the right solution for that?
Yeah, I think all of them are the right solution. I mean, if using a cloud is really important. The clouds serve they do so many different things. It's really important. They have a lot of support and that's how you get everything done. Ultimately, is you have to go to the cloud at some point.
Sure.
But on-prem is important as well because having access to the data the fastest possible is always going to be on-prem. I mean, you can't get faster than like a direct connection to the system. So I think that's important as well. So I think hybrid is how I would always suggest things to be. And everyone who starts with all cloud or starts with all hybrid, for example, or starts with all all on-prem, they always will turn to hybrid. Yeah. And the hybrid will turn to more hybrid, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I
guess with, oops, sorry.
Very good.
I was going to say with kind of breaking down on-prem versus hybrid versus cloud, do you have like different solutions that you would recommend in terms of not just like Synology, but what that pairs with, like what users would typically use with those different scenarios?
Well, the cloud always archival storage, where you want to put things to say like, this is where my final copy is of everything. And it's easy with like a Synology, for example, you can, back up an entire system to C2. And so it's a very easy to say, I'm going to take my entire database, back it up into C2, and encrypt it in layers as well within that. And that's really important. I think ultimately the cloud should be your final destination of data, because it's going to be, secure in the cloud.
Yeah, for sure.
How does security come into that? Because I know sometimes when dealing with, especially like bigger, like Disney or Marvel or something, that you hear stories of them transporting hard drives in armored trucks and stuff. That seems a bit extreme.
No, not at all. If you were to move 100 terabytes of data, you're going to fly it way faster than you're ever going to send it over the internet. So, no, not at all. Especially when you talk about like large databases. Yeah, I would definitely just ship it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Is there like a data amount where you would say like the benefit really outweighs the cost, where it's like, oh, if you're working with 5 terabytes of data, just upload it to the cloud, have good network connection. But if you exceed like X amount, like, do you have like a rough number of like what that might be, where it's like, hey, this is probably where limitations might be in terms of like working over the cloud? You might consider like other forms of delivery and distribution.
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say like 100 to 200 terabytes would probably be like a good starting point. Because especially with the internet connection, if they have a very good dedicated internet, then that's like nothing, and I've certainly seen, some internet connections where that could be downloaded and uploaded very quickly. But with like the internet I have in my house, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely more like commercial and industrial based.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess building off of that, like, let's just say like you have just like a rough scenario. Let's just say you have like 5 different people working in 5 different countries across the globe, on a single project. How would Synology like support that remote collaboration? Especially, let's just say they are working with 100 terabytes of footage. Like how could like a user expect to work like, or have like a NAS support that project?
Well, it all depends. Is it like 100? Like, you could make it on-prem for each location. There's ways to replicate data between all the devices. So they would have a server on site that just replicates between each location. You can create a network of replication. So that would be pretty easy to set up. You just need a Synology at each site.
Awesome.
But I mean, I don't know. There's like, I could take a different approach too. Like you could use Drive and share with them, like over the internet. If they have slow internet, that wouldn't be very great. The syncing side would be though, like every change in database would be synced instantly over like, the network. So they'd have to have some sort of like connection, and connecting that way would be, there's lots of different ways to do it. So they would just have to figure out which way they want to do it, how they want to connect your device.
Cool. Yeah, there's no one way of doing it. Everybody has like a specific, there's specific limitations, but in different expectations. So it's like there's a lot of different ways of doing it. It's just knowing what is available to them and how they may be able to solve that problem.
Yeah. So like even like the simplest one to put together that I would say just like, anyone could probably put it together as in Drive. So going back to Drive being one of the best things in media, you can use what's called Drive Share Sync. So you install Drive on 2 different servers, and Share Sync will take that file and replicate it between those 2 servers and keep that sync going. And even use Quick Connect to connect them. So you're using a very secure way to connect and create a tunnel between the 2 devices. And Share Sync Share Sync will connect the 2 together. And Share Sync is just Synology to another Synology. You're just syncing data within a project or a folder, or like on your Synology. If people are familiar with the file system, it'd be like one of your shared folders, or even a file within one of the shared folders is what you could do this with. So anything that you share on your SMB network typically, or NFS as well.
And since we kind of cover a broad range of different users and use cases and things like that, I'm stealing this question right from Peter. At what point does it make sense for like a small team or even an individual creator to invest in a NAS over just something like an external drive, 2 terabyte external drive or something like that?
I would say the minute that that data becomes so important that they don't want to lose it. That's the reason to really like start, actually storing data in RAIDs and actually trying to put things in the cloud. Like for me, I always had like a phone, the way I think about it. So I had my phone and things would back up to Google.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you have a kid, you take a lot of pictures and then
Sure.
you have a lot of storage. So like, that's what made it for me. I had to get a server for storage. So it's important. I don't want to lose those photos. And like before, I mean, if I lost photos of, from that was posted on, from back in the day, I don't think it was as important as what it is now. So. Yeah. So for business, that happens I think very quickly. So I'd say for any business, they should probably get a network attached server, at the very beginning. And for or any business server, I'd say at the very beginning, something to help you manage that. And then just when someone wants to learn about that type of technology, and they have a lot of different applications that kind of help people. So even like young and students and stuff like that, it's useful to have a server for learning computer science and things like that, or learning how to code. So there's a lot of reasons.
I should give my kid a server. Just be like, this is the server you're going to grow up with, and
so share yours with them.
Yeah, your birthday, another server.
Yeah. Well, no, that's actually an interesting thought. Like I wouldn't have thought it. Even like a college student or something having their own little media server, or not necessarily media, but just a server for like their own little Google Drive of their own.
For student files, and they can share pictures with their family now that they're traveling. And then it's a little private on their Wi-Fi.
That's neat, because I have to say, even just personally, there's a few projects that I had done in college that I wish I could find again, because I did such a good job on them, and I have no idea. I think they're just gone now. It was 15 years ago or something, and so who knows what random cloud service I was using back then. Yeah, that's actually really clever.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I think building off of that, let's just say like you are talking to a college student who is getting more specifically like somebody in an undergraduate program who has retained so much media, and now they're about to embark on their career journey. What is there a specific model or amount of storage or type of NAS that you would recommend that they start off with? And is there can it scale in the future, or are they going to have to buy a new NAS every time they exceed, or what's some advice you can give somebody who is looking for something that's scalable but also something to start off with as an entry point?
What I like to do is really say how much data do I have right now that I think I would put in a server. At that point, it's I got 1 terabyte. We'll just say someone new 1 terabyte of data. I would look at tripling and doubling whatever that is, whatever that number is that you think you're going to be putting into a server. Triple or double it, or quadruple it. All of those would be good ways, and then try to leave empty bays if possible, or leave the expansion room in your rack for expanding it later on, because I would say a large chunk of the servers that we have, there is of course some that do not expand. They all are expandable, and you can add another 12 bay to a rack mount that is 12 bay and just about every 12 bay server that we provide, or same thing even with the desktops. Many of them will have a 5 bay that you can add to them, which can be pretty useful to say, hey, I'm going to add another, 5 drives to this whole platform, or this whole data store. New volume on the network to work with. So awesome.
Yeah. I kind of want to rewind a little bit. You've mentioned a few different, I think they're software applications that you mentioned, Drive, ShareSync. What are some other of those that help people do what they do with their NAS?
Yeah. So Cloud Sync is another one that is very useful. So think of like I have things in my drive, my Google Drive, or my very different applications, any S3 compatible storage or cloud server, and Cloud Sync will replicate data between those two locations. So it's a way of pulling data out of a cloud and working with it locally, and then using that your server to sync that data to the cloud.
Okay.
A great way for managing even like indexing file changes and things like that as well, because it's all happening on the Synology and then sent to the cloud afterwards. And you're also able to like adjust it to be like one way or two way, or to only pull data down, only pull changes. So it's very much like a well-rounded and useful like cloud syncing tool. So I'd say Cloud Sync is one that's very large. I kind of mentioned this a little bit, but hyper backup. It when you talk about how do you back up like an entire Synology server, like bare metal, when you think of like bare metal backing up systems, hyper backup is usually what a lot of people will use for that scenario. There's of course other ways of backing up servers and data, but that's just the one that I think comes up very often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if somebody, like say a project, was looking to distribute across multiple channels, like a lot of different distribution channels, different files, like say for localization, how could they distribute that with Synology and using a NAS?
Yeah. So if like say for example it's not a ton of data, you can of course use Drive to share and sync data. Drive Share Sync will be a quick way to share data between different locations. And then when you deal with large databases, one way that had us came up is using like Presto File, which is a Synology service that we provide. It's a software that can do different speeds of data transfer, and it starts with different software tiers of like 100 gigabytes or 100 megabytes up to 500 megabytes. And that would be a way of like taking data and really sending it to other locations quickly using Presto File. And it's something you can purchase with the service team here.
Awesome.
And you're just to be for my own clarity, I think maybe I missaid it. That's usually for larger data sets and huge files or things. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like 100 terabytes, moving like those types of data. If you need to do the internet, that would be one way of connecting two servers using Presto and sending that data between those two servers.
It does it simultaneously, right? I know it's not like in sequence or anything. It's like it's sending everything at kind of the same point of time. Or is there like a queue or something? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a hard way to share my screen with it, but it's basically you could like one example would be I have two flash servers that are intaking a platform of data, and then I might use Presto server to actually import data between remote location Synology servers or even to a cold storage, and it would just help enhance the speed of everything. That would be one, and there is also a use case on our website of that. I can't remember which media company it was, but I could try to look that up and share with you guys as well. Using Presto server. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I have a question. That this is going to be a little, I suppose this isn't directly Synology, but you mentioned cold storage, and that kind of popped this question into my head. There's often in my experience, there's some debate on the best long-term storage solutions. Like we're talking data archives for like a long time. A lot of people say like DVDs. Some people are will have stacks of platter drives on a shelf somewhere. A buddy of mine swears by magnetic tape.
Yeah.
To this day. And so I'm curious what your opinion is on that. And this is going to be just James' opinion. It's not Synology. I'm just curious how you would say, like, if I want to store my data for 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. But I would guess, I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know.
That's okay.
Anything physical that doesn't need to be plugged in to keep itself, locked in data. So probably I don't know, tape or something like that, or SSDs or something. I don't know. Hard drives.
Those are really random.
Very large RAIDs, multiple RAIDs. That's what it would be. Like lots of physical disks. I have no idea.
Final record question. Etch it under the.
Yeah, I do see a lot of tape. I know tape has been around for a very long time, and a lot of industries use it because it can be good for that type of cold storage. But
it just takes forever if you need to get it back.
Well, it's just like I got 100 VCRs I got to plug it into or something along those lines. Or those servers are wild. I've only seen like a few of them in my life, like in person, and they're kind of interesting.
Yeah, an agency I worked at stored all of their real old archive stuff onto LTO tape, and sometimes like 5 years later, they'd be like, "Hey, can we reopen this project?" And our media manager would look and be like, "Crap." Yeah. It's like, well, I'll give it like a couple days and clear my schedule, and
they can take some time.
Yeah. I guess going on the topic of reading and writing gaming stuff, what I guess are there any specific ranges of like read write based off like some of the NAS solutions you have that you would recommend for like projects where it's like, oh, we do need the disk to write faster because we need it to be more responsive, and I guess what's the range of that and what you would recommend in different scenarios based on that?
So with media and doing inbound, you can always get the best read and write performances with using larger RAID groups. So 12 drives in a RAID would have very good performance. And then doing things like RAID 10 would be one way of accomplishing large RAIDs. But when dealing with RAID 10, you really want to plan for the future. So making sure you're using all 12 bays when making that RAID 10 would be the first thing. I wouldn't do partial RAID 10s. I'd always move into RAID 6 with most data storage, especially with this is by only Synology. It's we should probably put in RAID 6 just because it's good with business and good for, that's what any bank would put in place as well. Mm-hmm. And then RAID SSD cache as well. If you really want to create performance using enterprise grade M.2s and enterprise grade SATA disks is really important as well. If you're doing a nice SSD cache for a big data store, we have some servers that I deal all the time with. This is the most common one that I will deal with when we talk about just 100 terabytes of data, and they just want a good platform to put a lot of data in. That what they'll do is we'll pick a 16 bay server, and then the first 4 bays will use SATA SSDs, and then the 12 bays afterwards will use 20 terabyte drives is some of the largest hard drives we're working with right now. At the time of this recording, I can say that. So 12 drives, and now I have this 4 SATAs that are in a RAID 5, so they're already having some redundancy. They're going to be a read write cache for this 100 plus volumes that I'm working with, and now I have really good performance. I can even pin certain folders and projects, certain shared areas to the SSD cache. We have 7 terabyte drives for our enterprise SSDs right now at the time of this recording, and 4 of those in a RAID 5 is quite a bit of space to work with for when you talk about media files. And then you have and that's a RAID 5 that's next to a RAID 6 or a RAID 10 if you really need that type of speed. Most people just that type of SSD cache is enough. Your ability to put the data into the server is all going to hit the SSD cache first, and then the SSD cache is going to organize it into the RAID over time. So I like to think of it like the bigger the SSD cache, especially when you use like the 16-bay server that I'm talking about, it's like a funnel, like a funnel of data into that server. So lots of people working on different projects is easier to work with. That's also how I would even do like a big, large private cloud too, is a similar approach.
And I guess in a similar vein, what kind of network setup would that require?
Like 10 gig, that 20,
That's
25
close,
gig.
right?
Yeah, just as fast as possible, I would say. The best you can get. For if you're using that size of a platform, like we'll just say, you're using a big platform, like 7 terabyte drives. Each of them write at a ridiculous IOPS, and so you need a pretty fast network to even like use that at its full speed. So like even with like smaller servers that we deal with, when you put an SSD cache on them, you're going to max your 1 gig network pretty quickly. So linking in like when I look at Synology servers, I always look at like 3 things: like how many ports am I able to add to this server, and then how many bays do I have to work with. And the more ports and the more bays, the more speed I can actually utilize of that server. So yeah, like when you do an SSD cache, you want to have as much speed as possible. It's good to add that 10 gig to it, that 10 gig upgrade, because if you just have like 4 1 gig networks plugged into it and you have a full SSD RAID, especially if it's like 12 drives, the server's being underutilized. It's it has a lot of speed that's there that it can't do because of the network limitations. So yeah, always add more network to it. I always like to see 25 gigs if possible. SFP plus, so fiber optics. You always want to use fiber optics for that low latency.
So cool. I mean, yeah, I think this was a really good Q&A, really good conversation. I think we'll call it here. Thank you, James, for joining us, and I would thank the audience as well for joining us and talking about Synology. If you guys have any questions, any more questions, or need anything specific solutions for your own workflow or use case, be sure to hit us up. There'll be a link below. And thanks again, James, Peter, for taking time out to talk with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.